I never thought my breakup healing trip could lead to something like this. I was horrified by what I saw in that place, the kind of horror that doesn't scream or chase you, but stands still, smiling, waiting for you to notice it. It all started after I decided to take a few days off everything. No friends, no phone calls, just me, my car, and the open road. I thought isolation would heal me. I didn't realize how dangerous being truly alone could be. I'd been driving since morning, heading nowhere specific, just following random turns through mountain roads and pine forests. By late evening, fog had started rolling in, that thick, milky kind that blurs everything past 10 feet. I hadn't seen another car for over an hour. My phone had no signal, and the fuel gauge was starting to dip dangerously low. That's when I saw it, a flickering neon sign in the mist. Hollow Road Motel. At first glance, it looked almost charming. A long single-story building, lined with yellow bulbs that buzzed faintly in the mist. The front porch had flower pots and rocking chairs, though both looked untouched for years. I pulled into the small parking lot and shut the engine. The silence that followed was almost too heavy, like the world was holding its breath. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of old wood and lavender, the kind of smell that could be comforting in daylight but feels wrong when it's dark out. A small brass bell sat on the counter, so I rang it once. A moment later, a woman appeared, late 60s, soft voice, pale as porcelain, wearing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Good evening, dear." "Checking in?" she asked. Yeah, just for a few nights. 3 maybe?" "Oh, how lovely," she said, her voice lilting like a lullaby. "We don't get many guests anymore. My husband and I were just saying how quiet it's been." As she handed me the registration book, I noticed something behind her. A shelf filled with porcelain dolls. All of them dressed in tiny lace dresses, their faces painted into the same faint smile. Each doll was identical. I tried not to stare. While I filled out my name, she said something strange. "We keep a doll in every room. House tradition, you see, they're family." I smiled awkwardly. "Oh, that's sweet." She tilted her head slightly. "Don't move them. And don't look at them too long, dear. Some guests find that unsettling. That should have been my first red flag. But instead, I just laughed it off, thinking maybe she meant they were fragile antiques or something. The old man appeared then, her husband, I assumed. He looked even paler than she did, his thin white hair slicked back neatly. He didn't speak much, just handed me my key, an actual brass key on a wooden tag that read Room 7. He said softly, "Room 7's ready." "No doll in that one," I frowned. "Oh? Why not?" He just looked at me for a moment before saying, "She doesn't like it when there's one in there." Before I could ask who she was, he turned and walked away. The corridor leading to my room was dim, lit only by yellow bulbs that flickered slightly. Every door I passed was numbered, and sure enough, each room had a small porcelain doll sitting on a chair by the window facing outward, as if watching the parking lot. I slowed down when I noticed one's head was slightly turned toward the hallway. Its glassy blue eyes caught the light, and for a second, I thought it blinked. By the time I reached room 7, I was already uneasy. My room looked plain. One bed, a dresser, a chair, a window that faced the woods. No doll anywhere. The air smelled faintly of dust and lavender again. I put down my bag and sat on the bed, listening to the creaks of the building settling. I tried turning on the TV, but the static was unbearable. Every channel hissed white noise. When I muted it, I thought I heard something else. A faint tapping sound, rhythmic, coming from the wall behind the bed. Like fingernails against wood. I pressed my ear to it. Nothing. Just silence. I told myself I was tired. I'd been driving all day, and maybe the fog, the isolation, and the weird old couple had just gotten in my head. I showered quickly and climbed into bed, but as I closed my eyes, I couldn't stop thinking about those dolls in the other rooms. Why did each room have one except mine? And what did he mean by, "She doesn't like it when there's one in there"? Around midnight, I woke up to what sounded like footsteps outside my door. Slow, deliberate ones. The wood creaked softly under the weight. I froze, holding my breath. After a few seconds, the steps stopped right outside my room. The doorknob didn't turn, it just stayed quiet. Then came that same tapping sound again, faint but close. Not from the wall this time, from the hallway. I wanted to peek through the peephole, but my body refused to move. Every instinct screamed at me to stay still. After what felt like minutes, the sound faded away. The silence that followed was worse. My heart was beating so hard that I could hear it in my ears. When I finally dared to open the door, The hallway was empty. But something had changed. The doll that had been sitting by the window of room 6, the one across from me, was gone. I stepped closer, my hands trembling. The chair was empty, the curtains gently swaying. I looked around, half expecting to see it on the floor or in another chair, but it was nowhere, just gone. I shut my door and locked it, trying to convince myself maybe the owners moved it. Maybe they were cleaning or fixing something. But deep down, a part of me knew that wasn't true. Because when I looked at my window before going back to bed, I could have sworn there was a faint reflection, small, white, and still, standing just behind me. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself it was just exhaustion. But that night, I didn't sleep. Not really. I just lay there waiting for morning, thinking how strange it was that my room didn't have a doll. I never realized that was the only reason I was still safe, at least, for now. I didn't get much sleep that first night. Every sound in that old building carried like a whisper down the halls. The wind against the windows, the ticking of the old clock in the lobby, the occasional creak of wood. By the time dawn finally broke through the fog, I felt half awake, half dreaming. When I stepped outside, the old woman from the front desk was already there, sweeping the porch. She smiled at me like she'd been waiting all along. "Morning, dear. How was your rest?" "Fine," I lied. "A bit noisy, though." She chuckled softly. "Old bones make old sounds," she said, tapping her broom against the steps. "You'll get used to it." I wanted to ask her about the missing doll from room 6, but something in her expression stopped me. There was a glazed calm in her eyes, like she was half there, half somewhere else. Instead, I just nodded and walked to my car. For a second, I thought about leaving right then, but I didn't. I told myself I was being paranoid. I'd come out here to clear my head, not run away from every weird old hotel I stumbled into. So, I decided to stay. 3 nights, just like I'd planned. That afternoon, I took a long drive to a nearby lake. The fog had cleared by then, revealing dense woods stretching endlessly. It was peaceful. The kind of silence I'd been craving after months of city noise and heartbreak. I even started feeling silly for being scared. But when I came back to the motel around sunset, the calm I'd found started to crack. As I parked, I noticed something off. Every room's curtains were drawn except mine. Through the thin fabric, I could see shapes, silhouettes, sitting by the windows. At first, I thought it was just the dolls again, but as I got closer, I realized something that made my stomach twist. Each doll was facing the window directly, sitting in the exact same pose, head tilted slightly upward, hands folded neatly in their laps. All except one. The doll in room 6, the one that had been missing last night, was back. Only this time it was facing the hallway, facing me. I forced myself to look away and went straight into my room, locking the door behind me. The air felt heavier that evening. Like the whole building was holding a breath again. The smell of lavender had grown stronger, almost sickly sweet now. I opened the window for fresh air, but the fog was back, thicker than ever. I couldn't even see the parking lot lights. Just a gray wall pressing against the glass. I tried to distract myself by journaling, something my therapist told me to do after the breakup. "Write it out," she'd said. "It helps you make sense of what's haunting you." Funny, I thought, how those words fit so well now. It was around 10:30 when I heard the sound. At first, I thought it was the wind again, a faint tapping on the glass. But then it came again, louder, slower, like a deliberate knock. I froze. The sound was coming from the window. My heart started pounding. I didn't want to look, but of course I did. And for a split second I wished I hadn't. Outside, pressed against the fogged glass, was a shape, small, pale, and still. It looked like a doll. Only this one was breathing. I stumbled back, knocking over my chair. When I looked again, it was gone. Nothing but fog. I rushed to the door, ready to find the owners and demand answers, but the hallway was pitch black. Only one bulb flickered near the far end. The rest had gone out. And then, from somewhere down the hall, I heard something soft, a kind of humming. A woman's voice, distant but clear. A slow lullaby rhythm. It grew louder as I stepped closer to the lobby. My voice shook as I called out, "Hello?" No response. The humming stopped abruptly. The silence that followed felt wrong, expectant. I turned the corner, and there she was. The old woman sat behind the counter, her eyes closed, gently stroking the hair of a porcelain doll on her lap. I could see her lips moving. She wasn't humming anymore. She was whispering to it. When she opened her eyes, she smiled at me, too wide this time. "You're up late, dear." Couldn't sleep? There was something outside my window, I said, trying to sound calmer than I felt. Oh, she said softly. Sometimes they get curious. It means they like you. Before I could respond, the old man appeared from the back room. His expression was blank, but his eyes, they were the color of porcelain too. Best get back to bed, he said. Don't look at them when they move. That's how they choose you. I didn't know what that meant, and I didn't want to. I went back to my room and shoved a chair under the door handle. For the next few hours, I sat awake on the bed, watching the fog curl against the window. I tried not to blink, not to close my eyes. Around 3 a.m., I must have drifted off, because when I opened my eyes again, there was something on the floor near the window. A single porcelain hand. It wasn't there before, and just as I stared at it, too terrified to breathe, I heard a soft giggle, faint, childlike, coming from somewhere behind the wall. That's when I realized the tapping from last night hadn't been random at all. It had been counting down. I never thought I'd wish for daylight as badly as I did that night, but I had no idea that the real nightmare hadn't even started yet. I don't remember falling asleep that morning, but when I woke up, sunlight was streaming through the window like nothing had happened. The porcelain hand that had been on the floor was gone. I told myself maybe I dreamt it, that exhaustion had made me hallucinate, but deep down, I knew I hadn't. When I stepped outside, the hallway smelled faintly of polish and lavender again. The air felt thick, humid. Every door I passed was slightly open, as if someone had been inside recently. I glanced into room 6. The doll was back in its chair, facing the window again, its tiny porcelain hand intact. I should have left that morning. I really should have. But I didn't. Maybe I was too proud, or maybe too curious. Whatever the reason, I convinced myself to stay. The old man was in the lobby, polishing a row of dolls that sat neatly on the counter. Their faces gleamed under the weak light, eyes glassy and lifeless. He looked up when I walked in. "Rough night?" he asked. "You could say that," I muttered. "I thought I saw something outside my window." He smiled faintly. "They get restless sometimes." "They?" I asked. He paused, his hand hovering over one of the dolls. "You'll see," he said quietly. "Just don't look at them when they move." That sentence hung in my head all day. Don't look at them when they move. What did that even mean? Dolls don't move. Not on their own. I tried to distract myself by driving into town, but when I got there, it was practically deserted. Just a gas station, a closed diner, and an old church with boarded windows. The only person I saw was a man fixing a sign by the road. When I mentioned the Hollow Road Motel, his face tightened. "That place still open?" he asked. "Yeah. Why?" He didn't answer, just shook his head and said, "You shouldn't stay there alone." When I came back that evening, the fog was already creeping in again. The motel looked smaller somehow, swallowed by the mist. I parked under the flickering sign and felt the same pit form in my stomach. The lights in the hallway seemed dimmer than before. That night, I tried to sleep early. I left the lamp on and I wasn't taking chances, but around 2:30, I woke up again. The air felt different. The lavender scent was stronger, mixed with something metallic. Then came the whispering. It started faint, like someone breathing softly near the vent, but as I sat up, it grew louder. Words began to take shape, dozens of them overlapping, murmuring in a language I didn't understand. I got out of bed and pressed my ear to the wall. The whispers were inside the walls. Suddenly, the vent cover rattled. I jumped back just as the small porcelain finger poked through the slits, followed by another. I screamed and stumbled toward the door, but before I could grab the handle, I heard it. The sound of small footsteps in the hallway. Tap, 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 slow, deliberate. Getting closer, I held my breath and looked through the peephole. What I saw didn't make sense. The doll from room 6 was standing upright, right outside my door, its head tilted, glass eyes staring straight at me. Then it moved, not a twitch or a fall, a step. I stumbled back, covering my mouth to keep from screaming. The tapping stopped, then came a soft knock. 3 gentle taps against the wood. I didn't move. Another knock, louder this time, and then, from behind me, I heard a voice whisper in my ear, "Don't look." I spun around, but no one was there, just the mirror above the dresser, and for a split second, I swore I saw someone standing behind me in it, a figure, pale and motionless. I ran to the window and yanked the curtains open. Outside, the fog was so thick it looked solid, but through it I could make out dozens of silhouettes, small, child-sized, all standing perfectly still. Dolls lined across the parking lot, facing my room. That was the moment I realized I couldn't stay another night. I started throwing my things into my bag, my hands shaking. I didn't care about the money or the reservation. I just needed to get out. But when I turned toward the door again, the knob began to rattle, slowly. Someone, or something, was trying to open it from the other side. I grabbed the lamp, ready to smash my way out if I had to. The rattling stopped, the silence pressed in so thick I could hear my own pulse. Then faintly from the other side of the door, I heard that same childlike giggle again. I froze. The air grew colder. My breath came out in white mist, and right before the light flickered out completely, a whisper came from the dark. "It's your turn." I didn't know it then, but that night wasn't the end of it. It was the invitation. I didn't sleep after that. I sat in the corner of the room until daylight, clutching the lamp like a weapon. Every sound felt like a threat. Every creak, every sigh of wind against the window. When the sun finally rose, it didn't bring warmth. It only revealed how wrong everything looked in daylight. The wallpaper seemed to ripple like it was breathing. The air carried that same faint scent of lavender. Too sweet, too thick, masking something rotten beneath it. I decided I was done. I didn't care about being polite or paying for another night. I just wanted to leave. I stormed into the lobby, dragging my suitcase behind me. The old woman was there, sitting perfectly still in her chair, her eyes fixed on the front door. She smiled when she saw me. "Leaving so soon?" she asked softly. "Yes," I said. I need to get back." Her smile didn't fade. "Such a shame. The dolls will miss you." I ignored her, pushing the door open, but the moment I stepped outside, my stomach dropped. My car was gone. Not stolen. Gone. There were tire marks leading out of the lot, but they stopped halfway through the fog, as if the car had just vanished. My hands started shaking. "What did you do?" I demanded. The old woman tilted her head. "You can't leave yet, dear. You're not ready." "Ready for what?" Her eyes gleamed like wet glass. "For her." Before I could respond, the old man appeared behind the counter, holding something in his hand. My car keys. He placed them gently on the wood and said in that low, steady voice, "She doesn't like it when guests leave early." Something in his tone made my skin crawl. I backed away slowly, clutching my bag. "I'll find help," I said. "Someone will." "There's no one out there," he interrupted. "Not for miles." The old woman rose from her chair, her joints creaking like wood. "You'll understand tonight," she said. "After all, she's been waiting for you." I ran. Down the hall, through the fog, anywhere that wasn't there. I didn't stop until I found myself at the far end of the motel, where the last few rooms stood in silence. The doors were all slightly ajar. I could see shapes inside, dim outlines sitting in chairs facing the windows, dolls, every single one of them. But then I saw it. A door, at the end of the hall marked, "Staff only." I don't know why I opened it. Maybe I thought there'd be a back exit. Instead, what I found made my stomach twist into knots. The room was filled with shelves, hundreds of them, stacked with porcelain limbs, hands, faces, eyes. Some cracked, some half-painted, some still wet with glaze. The smell of varnish and something worse, flesh, beneath it. On one of the tables lay a half-finished doll. Its porcelain face was only partly formed, and underneath it, human skin peeked through. Real skin. I stumbled back, covering my mouth. My elbow knocked something over. A small framed photo that clattered to the floor. It showed the old couple, smiling in front of the motel, but behind them were guests. Dozens of them, the same guests I'd seen in the hallway dolls. The whispers began again, faint at first, then rising, filling the air like wind through dead leaves. I turned toward the shelves, and my blood ran cold. The dolls were shaking. Tiny tremors at first, then violent rattles. Their eyes flicked open one by one, glass pupils gleaming in the dim light. I bolted out of the room, slamming the door behind me, but the whispers followed, hundreds of voices murmuring the same thing over and over. "Don't look at them when they move." I ran to my room, grabbed my bag, and tried the window. The fog outside churned like a living thing. I could barely see the porch. I had no choice. I had to go through the lobby. When I stepped inside, the old man and woman were waiting. Only now, they weren't smiling. Their skin had turned pale and cracked, hair stiff like doll's fibers. Their eyes were hollow, glassy. They moved in jerks, not steps. The woman reached out, a trembling hand, her voice a dry whisper. She wants you in room 9. Behind them, the lobby door swung open on its own. I saw it then. Room 9 at the very end of the hall, its door glowing faintly in the dark. A low humming came from inside, the same lullaby I'd heard that first night. I should have run, but my body wouldn't listen. Something pulled me forward like invisible threads around my limbs. My feet moved on their own, dragging me closer. The humming grew louder, a melody filled with whispers, laughter and cries. Inside room 9 the air was colder than ice. In the center stood a large figure. Not quite human, not quite doll. Her porcelain face was flawless except for one detail, a thin crack running down her cheek. Her eyes weren't glass, they were alive. "You're beautiful," she whispered, her voice like shards of glass. "You'll stay beautiful forever." I screamed and swung my lamp at her. The light shattered against her face, splintering the porcelain, revealing gray flesh underneath. She shrieked, not like a person, but like 1,000 voices wailing at once. The walls began to shake. The dolls on the shelves started to fall, shattering one by one, releasing black smoke that twisted through the air. I grabbed a shard of the broken lamp and slashed at her again, then ran through the door as the entire hallway filled with screams. The fog outside was thick, but I didn't stop running. I didn't care where I went. I just needed to get away from that place. Behind me, I heard the old woman's voice one last time, drifting through the mist. "You can't leave, dear. You're already part of us." I didn't look back. I couldn't, because some part of me knew if I did, they'd be moving again, and this time, I'd be one of them. I didn't even feel my feet hit the ground when I burst through the shattered window. The night air bit into my lungs like glass, sharp and freezing, but it was still better than that suffocating silence inside. My car was parked in the gravel lot, half shrouded in mist, its silhouette barely visible under the flickering motel light. I sprinted toward it, my breath coming in ragged gasps, the crunch of my boots echoing like breaking bones. Behind me, I heard it, a door creak open. Then another. The sound of tiny porcelain feet tapping against the floorboards grew louder. I didn't look back. I couldn't. My fingers shook as I jammed the key into the ignition, but the engine coughed, stuttered, and refused to start. Come on, please," I whispered through my teeth, slamming the steering wheel. Something brushed the back window. A small handprint bloomed against the glass, delicate, childlike, but it wasn't human. The fingers were too thin. The joints cracked like dried clay. The car finally roared to life, and I floored the gas. Gravel exploded under the tires as I sped down the empty road, not daring to glance in the rearview mirror. In that moment, I thought I was free. I thought I'd outrun whatever curse had rooted itself in that place. But freedom, I learned, doesn't come that easily, not from something that collects souls. The fog swallowed the road. It was so dense I could barely see 2 meters ahead. I rolled down my window, desperate for air, but all I got was the smell of smoke, faint but unmistakable. The same smoke that clung to that motel's curtains. I didn't understand it until I realized the truth. I wasn't leaving them. They were following. I drove for what felt like hours until a small gas station flickered into view. The lights buzzed weakly, moths orbiting the fluorescent glow. I stumbled out of the car, trembling, and half collapsed against the counter inside. The clerk, a young guy with dark circles under his eyes, looked startled. "Miss, are you okay?" he asked. I need help," I stammered. "There's a motel down the road, the Hollow Road Motel. You have to call the police, there's something wrong there." He blinked slowly, then his face went pale. "Wait," he whispered. "What did you say?" "The Hollow Road Motel," I repeated. "The one past the fog near the woods." "Room 7, he took a step back, shaking his head. "That place burned down 10 years ago. No one's there, hasn't been for years." I felt my stomach drop. "That's not possible. I was just there. The owners, the dolls, they..." My words tangled in my throat. I turned around, desperate to prove it, to point at the road behind me, but my car door was wide open, and on the passenger seat sat a doll. It was wearing my jacket. Its porcelain lips were painted the same color as mine. Its eyes, impossibly real, seemed to shimmer with recognition. I screamed and stumbled backward, knocking into a display of snacks. The clerk shouted something, but I didn't hear it. My world had narrowed to that one image, me, sitting there in doll form, frozen mid-breath. When I blinked, it was gone. The car was empty again. I don't remember much after that. The police said they found me hours later, shivering and muttering about dolls and fire. They said the old motel was nothing more than a pile of charred wood and melted porcelain. They found dozens of doll heads in the ashes, some centuries old, some disturbingly new. They asked if I wanted to see them. I said no. Weeks passed. I tried to rebuild my life. Therapy, new apartment, new city, but I still can't sleep through the night. Every now and then I wake up around 2:47 a.m. hearing that faint rhythmic humming. It's always the same melody the old man used to hum. And sometimes when I pass by a toy shop or a thrift store window, I see them, dolls with glassy eyes and faint cracks around their necks. Some of them look just like the guest faces I glimpsed in that hallway, but once, just once, I saw one that looked like me. Same eyes, same small scar above the lip, sitting quietly on a shelf, and its porcelain lips curved upward, into a smile. Now I keep my curtains closed. I try not to look at mirrors after dark, because sometimes in the glass, I think I see another reflection behind me, a smooth white face. Watching. Waiting. Maybe I escaped that motel. Maybe I didn't. Maybe part of me stayed behind. One more soul trapped in porcelain. I tell myself it's over. That I'm safe. That I'm real. But when I touch my skin lately, it feels colder, harder, like porcelain. Is this the end? Or will they hunt me? And others for forever? I don't know anymore. What do you think? Let me know in the comments.